So why am I at a gym walking on a treadmill holding 7-Up, Rogaine, and a tea bag? Well, it's because all these items are connected in a really cool way. They're all being used today for something other than what they were invented for. So let's get into it, starting with 7-Up. Oh, that's a lot of sugar. So this guy, Charles Griggs, who invented 7-Up, he used to work in a different soda company where he was very successful and made a bunch of money, but he wanted to make his own soda company, and so he developed the Howdy Corporation, or the Howdy Company, to make his own soda. But soda companies back then, there were hundreds of them, and so the competition was very high. It's not like today, where there's like 2 soda companies that own every single soda you can imagine. So he wanted to make a lemon lime flavored soda, but there was hundreds of lemon lime flavored sodas, so he needed to stand out in some way. And so he intentionally added lithium to his soda and promoted it as a mood stabilizing drink. He needed people to buy it for some reason. The thing is, he didn't initially call it 7-Up. No, that name would have been too good. The original name for 7-Up was Bib Label Lithiated Lime Soda, which is an objectively terrible name, but it's very descriptive and tells you exactly what's in it. Lithium. A mood stabilizing drug. Also, the bib label part is super literal as well, because originally he wanted the label on these bottles to be a paper bib that wraps around the neck of the bottle that you could just tear off and throw away. Like, why were people in the 1920s so literal with their names? Hey Chuck, what's the name of this new soda you made? I was thinking of calling it lemon drink. Okay, but I don't really understand what I'm drinking. Okay, fair enough. Well, let's see. There's lemon and lime in there. There's some lithium, of course, naturally. And I think it'd be really cool if we could put a label on the bottle, but not like a sticky label. A paper label that looks like a bib on the neck that you just rip off and throw away. That'd be really cool. So how about Bib Label Lithiated Lime Soda? I love it. By the way, we actually don't know what lithium does to our bodies to make our mood stable. Like, we know that prescribing lithium to someone will help stabilize their mood, but what it actually does to our brains, what's called the mechanism of action, we don't know what that is. We know that it does something to the central nervous system, but exactly what? We don't know. So Griggs put lithium in his soda to stand out from the competition in order to entice people to buy his soda. He thought people would want to buy a soda that stabilizes your mood and kind of mellows you out. And he was right. Bib Label Lithiated Lime Soda was super successful. Thankfully, he changed the name shortly after to 7-Up Lithiated Lime Soda, and then shortly after that to just 7-Up. But the wild thing is, no one actually knows where the name 7-Up came from. Griggs never told anyone why he called it 7-Up. There's tons of theories out there, ranging from he won a bunch of money at the casino playing on number 7 to there's 7 letters in the word 7-Up, which doesn't seem right to me at all. My favorite theory, and the one that I think is right, is that the 7 is a nod towards lithium's atomic mass, which is 6.9, and the up hints towards lithium's mood stabilizing ability, where if someone is in a depressive state and they take lithium, it'll increase their mood, it'll uplift their mood. And so I personally think that's where 7-Up comes from, but no one actually knows what the true origin of the name 7-Up is. Now, in 1948, the US FDA banned the use of lithium in soft drinks, and so they had to remove the lithium from the drink and change the formula, but that's how it started. It started as a mood-lifting soda that was forced to change, and today is just another sugary lemon lime soda drink. By the way, Sprite or 7-Up? Let me know in the comments. So minoxidil is a drug that goes by different brand names like Rogaine or Keeps, but its intended use is a topical treatment for hair loss. So if someone is losing their hair and they want to prevent more hair loss or regrow hair, they can use minoxidil to try and promote hair growth. But that wasn't its intended purpose. Minoxidil was originally created to try and treat stomach ulcers by a company called Upjohn, which was a real serious pharmaceutical research company, despite having a name that sounds like a setup for a terrible joke. But once the clinical research started, they noticed very quickly that minoxidil wasn't doing anything to treat ulcers, but it was acting like a vasodilator. It was widening people's blood vessels, and some researchers noticed that it was causing hypertrichosis in some of their participants. And hypertrichosis is the unusual hair growth on a person's body, and so people would grow hair on their forehead or on their nose. But Upjohn didn't want to get involved in the whole industry of hair regrowth, and so they sold minoxidil as a pill under the brand name Lonitin as a treatment for high blood pressure called hypertension. But the side effect about hair growth could not be kept secret for long, because doctors started prescribing Lonitin to their patients who had hypertension. And they quickly started realizing, hey, these patients that keep just prescribing this drug to are suddenly growing more and more hair. And so doctors started prescribing Lonitin off-label to patients who were suffering from hair loss. According to one study, many dermatologists were prescribing Lonitin to over 100,000 patients a year who were suffering from hair loss. Despite it not being a hair loss drug, they were prescribing it for hair loss. Minoxidil was never meant to be a huge moneymaker for Upjohn. There's not that many people who suffer from hypertension and need a drug to deal with it. But the number of people that suffer from androgenic alopecia, otherwise known as male pattern baldness, is huge. By the way, androgenic alopecia does not affect only men. Despite colloquially being called male pattern baldness, it affects men and women. Something like 20 to 50% of women will experience unusual hair loss before they turn 50. And so Upjohn realized this and they said, hey, look, a lot of people are using this as a hair loss treatment. Why don't we just rebrand it? And so they changed the name of the brand from Lonitin to Rogaine in 1988 and started selling it and promoting it and marketing it as a hair loss treatment. By the way, they actually originally wanted to call it Regain, as in you're going to regain your hair, but the FDA was like, no, that's misleading because it's not guaranteed to regrow your hair, so they made them change it from Regain to Rogaine. So this little pill that Upjohn created in order to treat hypertension and make them a little bit of money ended up being the only FDA approved and most successful and most profitable hair loss treatment in the world. By the way, despite knowing that minoxidil does work, we actually don't know how it works. Again, we don't know the mechanism of action of minoxidil. So just like lithium and Tylenol, we know that they work, but specifically how, we don't know. The leading theory for minoxidil is that it promotes blood flow to the scalp, which helps oxygen flow better, which brings nutrients to the scalp, gets rid of waste, and so it promotes a healthier scalp, which allows hair to grow better. But we're still not sure exactly how it works. We put tea bags in hot water for the tea leaves to diffuse, and then we can take the tea bags out and enjoy our nice cup of tea. But that's not what Thomas Sullivan originally intended the tea bag to be used for. Thomas Sullivan was a tea merchant of a family of tea merchants in the early 1900s in New York, and he wanted to expand his tea empire. He wanted to sell tea globally. And so he packaged up tea leaves into little silk sachets, little silk bags, and sent these samples out all over the world. His intention was for his potential customers to open the silk bag, take the tea out, put it into a metal diffuser, and diffuse the tea into their hot water that way, which was popular at the time. But he didn't put instructions on it. And so when people got this little bag of tea, they just put it into their water thinking that it was some sort of diffuser that he invented. But because it was silk, the pores were very small and the tea didn't diffuse very well. And so these customers sent him mail and said, hey, I love your tea diffuser invention, but I think you should make the holes a little bit bigger because the tea wasn't diffusing very well. And he was like, oh yeah, that's what I intended. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was exactly the intention I had with that. Thank you for your feedback. We'll improve our invention in the second run. And so he had this idea. He's like, I can make a lot of money off this. And so he revamped the silk tea bag. He used gauze, which has larger holes, larger pores to allow for better diffusion of tea. And he started selling his tea in tea bags like this. And because he was a tea merchant already, his dad was a tea merchant, he already had this distribution network. And so he was able to popularize this invention he had that he accidentally stumbled upon, and he made the tea bag popular worldwide. But it was discovered that 7 years prior to this accidental event happening, two women in Wisconsin, Mary McLaren and Roberta Lawson, intentionally invented the tea bag. They even patented it with an explanation of how to use it and why they invented it. They said basically it sucks to have to create an entire pot of tea just to have one cup. And if you don't drink the whole pot, you end up having to throw the whole thing out and it's wasteful. And so they thought, wouldn't it be amazing if there was just a little bag that you can put into hot water, it can diffuse, and then you can take that one bag and throw it away. That way you just make one cup of tea for yourself. And so that's what they created. They called it a tea leaf holder, but they weren't tea merchants. They didn't have that distribution network. So despite them selling their tea bags around their local area in Wisconsin, it never really got popularized. Now, it isn't really known if Sullivan knew about their invention or not. Back then, long distance communication wasn't easy, and so he very well could have just accidentally invented the same thing they did separately. But yeah, Lawson and McLaren were the first to intentionally invent the tea bag, but then Sullivan accidentally invented it 7 years later and made it popularized, and it's spread all over the world. And that's how most people consume their tea today. Okay, so when you go on a treadmill for like 10 minutes and you're like, oh my god, this is torture, you're actually not far from the truth. The treadmill was invented by William Cubitt in 1818 as a way to punish prisoners. At the time, it was thought that to reform prisoners' bad behavior, you need to grind them down through hard labor and pain and punishment. So he thought, let me make this device that we can use free labor from prisoners to also mill corn. And so he invented the world's first treadmill for Brixton Prison in London. It actually resembled a Stairmaster more than a modern treadmill. And so it was this big thing that prisoners would be stepping on constantly, causing this wheel to rotate that was connected to some underground machinery where it would be grinding, milling corn. That's actually where it gets its name from. Treadmill was used to mill corn. And this thing was a seriously bad punishment. Prisoners would be set on this thing for like 10 hours a day of constant walking. And it's not like they could stop anytime they wanted like you could on a regular treadmill, because this machine was huge. It had 25 guys walking at the same time. And so if you stopped, these other guys are still walking, and so the steps are still moving, so you had to keep going. And to make things worse, guards were noticing that despite this being a form of punishment, prisoners were using it as social time to talk to the guys beside them. And so they started putting partitions between them, giant walls, to stop them from communicating. And so these prisoners had to walk on this thing for 10 hours a day in silence, grinding corn for free. It was a pretty messed up form of punishment, but it caught on. It became super popular for a very specific reason. So prisons used to offer next to no amenities to their prisoners, but in the late 1700s, there was a push in Britain for some prison reform to offer at least a couple amenities to their prisoners. And so some people at the time thought that this might cause poor people who were living on the street and destitute to want to commit a simple crime to go to prison to at least get a roof over their head and a meal and something to sleep in. And so there was a big push to make prison even more undesirable than it already was. And Cubitt's invention could not have come at a more perfect time. Although the treadmill was originally intended to be free labor, but also actually have a purpose of milling corn, it started to be used as just a form of punishment. Prisoners used to be sent to mill air for hours on end. Now, by 1885, the treadmill as a form of punishment was falling out of favor because it had been repeatedly shown that it was not a good way to reform prisoners' behavior. It was not doing anything except killing about one prisoner a week. And so the treadmill just kind of disappeared, only to come back in 1913 in America, where an American inventor patented it for an exercise machine. Eventually, in the 1960s, William Staub invented the first home exercise treadmill, becoming the best-selling home exercise equipment in the history of the United States. And so next time you're on the treadmill and you're suffering, remember, good. That's exactly what it was intended for. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I post new videos every week. And if you want to watch any of my other videos, click one of these videos here. Also, I have a Patreon if you want to support the channel, help me make more of these videos. Link in the description. And remember, subscribe to stay curious. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.